Let's talk about crochet pumpkins. I have been seeing versions of knit or crochet pumpkins everywhere. They're at Target, they're at Joann's, they're at CVS, and of course they're all over my YouTube and TikTok feeds as well. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a small crochet pumpkin. And when I say small, I actually mean tiny. Today we're making these. My goal for this tutorial is for you to leave being able to make one of these pumpkins, even if you have never crocheted anything in your life. I promise this is a very, very, very simple craft and you're gonna have so much fun making it. If you're new here, I'm Auna. Welcome to the Sunflower family. Let's get crafting. Let's start with the supply list. One of my favorite things about the crochet pumpkins is you can make these any size with any type of yarn, and especially with how tiny these tiny ones are, it's a really good way to use leftover yarn from past projects. The yarn I'm using for my tiny pumpkins is Red Heart Super Saver. I'm using the colors Gold, Coral, and Light Sage. I'm using this brown yarn for the stem, and if I'm being honest, I have no idea what this yarn is. I think it's Josh's, so we just stole some of Josh's brown yarn to make the stems. You're also going to need some form of polyfill. If you don't have any of this, but if you have old pillows, you can always cut open your old pillows and steal some stuffing. And I've also seen a lot of people just wadding up toilet paper or paper towels and stuffing them inside the pumpkins. That will absolutely work too. Lastly, you're going to need a darning needle and your crochet hook. The yarn I'm using recommends that you use a 5.5mm crochet hook. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook. I think that using a slightly smaller hook than recommended for your yarn can help your pumpkins be really tight knit and not let as much of the stuffing show through. Now that we've got all of our material, I think we're ready to start. So let's go make some pumpkins. I want this tutorial to be friendly to absolute beginners, so let's talk about how to hold your yarn and your hook. Different people hold their hooks different ways. I usually hold my hook in my hand like this. Like if you were gonna be like cutting your food with a fork and a knife, right? I kind of hold it like this. But recently I have started holding my hook like I'm holding a pencil, and I started liking that way too. So you may see me throughout the tutorial switching between pencil and fork cutting, knife eating dinner, and just do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever makes your hands feel best. Now for your yarn, the first thing we need to do is learn how to make a slip knot. Hold the tail of the yarn in your right hand, and then with your left hand, hold the yarn about like this, and then twist your yarn while sticking your pinchers through the little loop you're making. Grab the yarn and then pull it through. So let's repeat that one more time. Hold the tail in your right hand. With your left hand, you're gonna twist and put your hand through the loop you made, grab the yarn, and then pull it back through. That's how you make your slip knot. Take your hook, put it into your slip knot, and pull it tight. Not like super tight, just kind of tight, about like that. Just like there's a lot of different ways that people like holding their hooks, there's a lot of different ways that people like holding their yarn with their non-dominant hand. My grandma taught me how to crochet about 20 years ago, and this is how she taught me to hold my yarn. Hold out your non-dominant hand, or in my case, my left hand. Take your yarn and go around your pinky, under your middle two fingers, over your pointer finger, and then pinch. This is how we hold our project, and this allows us to keep the tension however we need it with our pointer finger, and it slowly pulls it through our fingers. So once again, we go around the pinky, under the middle two fingers, over your pointer finger, and pinch. Now we start the part of actually crocheting, and for this crochet project, we're going to start with a chain of 12. Remember, I am teaching you how to make these tiny pumpkins. If you want your pumpkin to be bigger, do more chains. To chain, all you do is wrap the yarn around your hook and then pull it back through your original loop. So that is one chain. Let's look at this really close. Wrap your yarn around your hook and pull it through your chain. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's chaining 12. For this pumpkin project, I'm going to be teaching you a stitch called half double crochet. I personally think that the second row of a crochet project is usually the hardest, especially when you're just starting out. It's so easy to accidentally make your stitches way too tight. So if you're struggling going back into these stitches in the second row, start over and make your stitches looser. For the second row, you're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to be going into the second stitch. To do a half double crochet, we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, go into our crochet project, grab our yarn again and pull it back through. Now we should have 3 pieces of yarn on our hook. 1, 2, 3. Now we yarn over again, or grab our yarn again and pull it through all of the 3 loops. 1, 2, 3. That is the stitch called half double crochet. Grab the yarn, go into your next stitch, grab the yarn again and pull it through. Now on your hook you have 1, 2, 3. Yarn over one more time and pull it through all 3 of those little loops, and continue to the end of the row. Let's take a really close-up look to show you exactly where our hook is going through. yarn over, go through right there, that little place right there. So here, if you can see it, right there. Grab the yarn and pull it through. So on our hook, we have 1, 2, 3. Yarn over again and pull it through all 3. Continue to the end of the second row. Now that we're at the end of the second row, we're going to do a very important step. Don't forget this step, or your project is going to start looking like a triangle instead of like a rectangle. Now you want this project to look like a rectangle. At the end of the second row, you're going to chain 2. So just like we started our project with chains, where we go yarn over and pull it through the loop, you're going to do that twice. Chain 2. So at the end of your second row, you have this little tail. Take the project and flip it in your hands. So it was like this at the end of the row. Now we flip it. We're going to be working back in the same direction every time. Every row from here on out is going to be exactly the same, but it is a little bit different than our second row was. So pay close attention to this part. This one tiny distinction is going to be what gives our pumpkins these beautiful little ridges. Look at the top of your project. Do you see how you have all of these little V's? Normally when you're crocheting, you would go through both of the V's. You would go underneath both of them. But we're not going to do that whenever we make our pumpkins. In this row, you're not going to be skipping the first stitch. We're going to go into the first stitch. For this row, go ahead and yarn over and go only into that back stitch. Continue doing the half double crochet just like you've been doing. Grab your yarn and pull it through. So you have 1, 2, 3 on your hook. Yarn over and pull it through all 3. So let's do that again. Yarn over, only go into that back loop. Not both of them, not the front one, just the back. And then finish your half double crochet. Let's look at it really, really close this time. Grab your yarn, only go into that back loop, yarn over, pull it through. Grab your yarn and pull it through all 3. Continue to the end of the row. Only going into the back loop is what creates this beautiful ridge effect. If you went into both loops, it would just look very flat instead of having these ridges that makes it truly look like a pumpkin. At the end of the third row, you're going to chain 2 again, and then once again, we're going to flip our project. Continue this row just like the previous. Yarn over through the back loop, grab the yarn and pull it through. So we have 1, 2, 3 on our hook. Yarn over again and pull it through all 3. Now you can start to really see our pumpkin ridges starting to form. We're at the end of another row, so once again, chain 2 and flip the project. At the end of each row, if I remember, I like to grab my spool of yarn and just kind of unwind it a little bit. I think it's nicer to have it already unwound and ready rather than having to stop in the middle of a row to unwind. Once again, we're gonna chain 2 and flip. I know I've mentioned chaining 2 like a billion times at this point, but I get so many messages and comments from people asking, why does their project end up looking triangular? Like, why does it just keep getting smaller as they crochet? And so many people just forget to chain at the end. Now, how many you chain depends on the type of stitch you're doing. So I'm doing a half double crochet, and that's why we chain 2. If you're doing a single crochet, you just chain 1. If you're doing a double crochet, you chain 3. I'm thinking that for a treble crochet, you probably crochet 4, but someone correct me if I'm wrong. And right now feels like a good time to mention, I am using terminology used in the United States. If you are crocheting in the UK, the terminology is a little bit different. At the end of another row, and we're building more pumpkin ridges. Chain 2 and flip. Yarn over through the back loop, grab it, pull it through. Yarn over, pull through all 3. You can see that now on this side we have 3 distinct ridges, 1, 2, 3, and on this side we have 2 distinct ridges, 1, 2. To make this size pumpkin, we're going to be going until we have 6 ridges on both sides of the project. A lot of people like to count their rows. They would tell you half double crochet for 15 rows or 17 rows or 25 rows. I personally like to do things like measuring my project with a tape measure or doing something as simple as counting ridges if that's possible, because whenever I'm trying to remember exactly what row I'm on as I'm crocheting, I just honestly forget. Now there are apps that will count your rows for you. Just at the end of every row, you push a button and it just goes clink, okay, you're on row number 7 now. And that's nice, I have used that in the past, but I personally just kind of like to just be able to really relax whenever I'm crocheting, and whenever I have to think about counting rows, I'm not as relaxed. So that's why I would rather count ridges than rows. Also, for my beginner crochet friends, something I feel like people don't talk about enough is the direction of the crochet hook. So when you're crocheting, it's really easy to get it like stuck on stuff, right? So when we're half double crocheting and we grab our yarn, go through, grab the yarn again. Here, we want it to be pointing down, right? We want to be able to catch our yarn with our hook and pull it through. Now when we have 1, 2, 3 on our hook, it can be really tempting to just grab it like this with a hook and try to pull it through, but then your hook is going to get really stuck. So what I want you to do is wrap it around, and as you wrap, you're going to rotate your hook downwards. See how right now the hook is like facing down? And then when you pull it through, it's not going to get stuck on any of those other 3 loops. So we're going to go through, grab it. Now right now our hook is facing upwards, grab again, but instead of just pulling it straight through, turn the face downwards and then pull it through all 3 of those little loop-de-loops. With some practice, it's going to get really quick and just completely second nature to where you're not even going to be thinking about it. Let's see where we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're almost done, just a few more rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more row. Don't forget to chain 2 every time, then flip your project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is all the crocheting that we have to do to create our tiny pumpkin. Get kind of a long tail with your yarn and cut it. Grab your needle. I am going to be using a tapestry needle for this yarn. This part can be kind of difficult to get it threaded through without splitting your yarn. Just do your best. Take your time. Don't get frustrated. It's way easier if you have a little needle threader thingy that I'm sure has a name that I can't remember right now. There we go. I do have a bigger plastic darning needle that I use on my bigger pumpkins, but for these little bitty pumpkins, I like to use these tapestry needles. First things first, you're gonna finish off your crochet project. So just remove your hook, take your tail, and just take it back through that loop and pull it all the way through until you pull it tight. Figure out which side you want to be the outside of your pumpkin. If it doesn't really matter, then it doesn't really matter. Just fold it in half. If you have a very clear side that you want to be the outside of the pumpkin, that's gonna be on the inside of your fold. So this right here is gonna be the outside of my pumpkin. So we're gonna fold it right in half. Take your needle and sew up the sides of your pumpkin. This little pesky tail can kind of get in the way, so just hold it over to the side if you can. On the very last stitch, I like to also tie it off. So before you've pulled it all the way tight, take your needle, put it back through the loop to create a knot right there, tying it off. Now we've created our tube that will be creating our pumpkin. To make pumpkins, all you're really doing is creating a tube and then cinching the top and the bottom. So now we're gonna start by doing our first sewing of the top that's going to create the cinch effect. So basically just weave your needle in and out, all the way around the top of your pumpkin, or maybe the bottom of your pumpkin. I don't know which side of the pumpkin that this is gonna be yet, but top or bottom, go ahead and weave your yarn in and out. Once you've weaved it all the way around, go ahead and take it and cinch it tight. While it's being cinched tight, hold it tight and go ahead and sew it shut. So just take the needle across the top, pull it through, take it through the loop to create a little knot there. And you could probably just do it once. I like to do it a couple times just to make sure it's completely secure. Now we're gonna cut that tail. At this point, it should look like a little toboggan, a little hat take it and flip it inside out. Now you can see there's the bottom of your pumpkin. Look how cute it is. Grab some stuffing or your torn apart pillow or your paper towels or your tissue paper, whatever you got, and go ahead and stuff it into the pumpkin. Now this is why I said to cut a really long tail whenever you're cutting the tail, because this way you can just leave your needle on your yarn and you don't have to thread the needle twice. Start the yarn anywhere you want and tie it onto your pumpkin. I like to double knot this, of course. Now the same as the bottom, you are just going to weave the needle in and out around the whole top of the pumpkin. When I get all the way around, I like to go ahead and add in some more stuffing and just really make it a nice little plump pumpkin. You can make them as chunky as you want. Take the yarn and go ahead and cinch up the top of your pumpkin. While you're holding it all cinched, go ahead and sew the top shut just like you sewed the bottom shut. Now at this point you should be thinking, this looks like a ball, I want it to look like a pumpkin. This is how you create the pumpkin effect, where it really goes in at the bottom and in at the top. Take your yarn that's on your needle that should still be attached and go straight from the top of the pumpkin through the body of the pumpkin, out the bottom of the pumpkin. Pull that all the way through and pull it kind of tight. You really want it to like create this effect where it's pulling in the top of the pumpkin. Now from the base of the pumpkin, do the same thing. Just like move it over, I don't know, a tiny bit, and just put the needle back through the bottom and have it go back up through the top of the pumpkin. Pull it through. See, it's creating the pumpkin effect. Do this as many times as you want to make your pumpkin look exactly as pumpkin-y as you want it to look. The last time through, I like to just kind of put it out to the side. From the side there, you can just cut off the tail and we'll just like push the tail back in. That creates the body of our pumpkin. Time to make the stem. You can make your stems however you want. I'm just gonna show you how I made these little curly stems. They're super easy. They take no time at all. Once again, we're making our slip knot. So hold the tail in your dominant hand. With your non-dominant hand, rotate it so you create a loop. Put your pinchers through the loop, grab the yarn and pull it through. Now we're going to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to single crochet the second row. To single crochet, all we do is take our hook, push it through the loop, yarn over, pull it through. So this time we only have 1, 2 on our hook. Yarn over again and pull it through the 2 loops. Go through the next loop, yarn over, pull it through. We have 1, 2 on our hook, yarn over and pull it through the 2. Continue to the end of the row. It's really as simple as that. That's how I make my little stems. We can cut the yarn now, but make sure you leave a decent amount of tail. Not nearly as long of a tail as we did with the last one, but about that much. To finish off our project, just yarn over one more time and pull it through the loop all the way and then pull it tight. Now we're going to use these 2 tails to attach it to the top of our pumpkin. You can do this part however you'd like. You can put these each on a needle and then sew them through. I personally just like to use my crochet hook to grab each little tail, one on each side. Tie them together. I like to do a double knot, of course. Then I stick the crochet hook up through the bottom of the pumpkin, grab both of the tails and pull them straight through the pumpkin. I pull them out usually to the side, just like we did with that other tail earlier, cut them off, and tuck them back into the pumpkin. And there we have it. That is our adorable, tiny little crochet pumpkin that is super fast and super beginner friendly. If you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments and I will do my best to help you out. And if you end up making some crochet pumpkins, definitely let me know. These are my favorite thing to make this fall.